But I was talking to my sister, and I came up with this great video idea called Top 10 Willies, and we just we get like 10 famous people called Willie, and we just get pictures of them, and I talk about them. And I made it a video, and it's unlisted. But I don't know if I should post it. I need someone to watch it to tell me if it's good. Because it's kind of like, it's like almost cringeworthy, but I kind of like it as well.
You should post.
What?
Do you know what shit post is?
Oh, yeah. I thought you said you should post.
Yeah. Can you get the key, by the way?
Okay. Alright, let me...
Should we use the in-game chat for increased,
No, because then we won't be able to talk properly.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so... okay, this is the first one on the list, so this is probably, like, the easiest for me to talk about, is how some drugs are totally pointless. So, Z2, you know that I used to be a smoker. Did you say yes? Because you cut out.
Also, good job on quitting.
Yeah, thank you. But very recently, I was a smoker. So I was on cigarettes for a few weeks, a few years ago, and then I tried vaping, and I was addicted to that for on and off for I think 2 or 3 years, and then I just quit recently, and I've been quit for about a month and a half, and I wanted to talk about how smoking is totally pointless, and that's my realization that it's totally pointless is actually what motivated me to quit. And I think if more people knew about this, maybe people would be able to quit easier. I don't know, because I know that quitting is very difficult, and it's not just about, like, I mean, it's all about mindset, right? But also people go through really tough times when they quit. I'm sure you know about this. Like, you hear when people talk about they get like really bad withdrawal symptoms, and the longer you smoke, the worse withdrawal symptoms you get, and they last for longer. So what, like, you get like, you start sweating a whole lot, you get in like really bad insomnia. A lot of people get depression, and this is a pretty big issue with smoking, is that people who have a history of major depressive disorder or treatment-resistant depression, for that matter, tend to have a harder time quitting because it tends to make them more depressed and for longer. And generally speaking, people say that can last up to around a month, but I think from my own experience, it can last a little bit longer. But I don't know how long exactly it can last. But basically, it's depression and anxiety are the main sort of symptoms why people struggle to quit, because these are pretty persistent and severe sort of like psychological symptoms, and it happens for a lot of drug withdrawals. It's not just nicotine, but nicotine is one of those drugs that's like, it's incredibly addictive, and people usually use it long term, and so quitting is for those people who get really anxious and really depressed, it's like almost impossible to quit, because it's like when you're depressed, you kind of stop caring about your health. And that's one of the main reasons people decide to quit nicotine in the first place, is because they have this idea in their head that, oh, if only I quit smoking, I would live so much longer. And that's usually true, but people can still die after 20 years of not ingesting any nicotine through smoking or vaping. After 20 years, that's when your health has gone back to normal. So your chances of dying from a smoking-related illness after quitting, after 20 years, is that of someone who never smoked. So heart attacks, strokes, lung cancer, just all kinds of problems, right? And after 20 years, that's when you go back to normal. I think, what was my original point? I can't remember what I was going to say. Zitu, help me out, man.
Smoking causes a lot of health problems down the road, pressure, anxiety.
Yeah. So that's kind of why people struggle to quit. But I think it's all about mindset, right? Aside from those withdrawal symptoms, it's all about the mindset. And that kind of sounds really like cheesy and cringeworthy, but it's actually true. Like, if you quit smoking just because it's bad for your health, and then it makes you depressed, you're not going to care about your health anymore. So you're just going to go back to smoking. And it's all about like perspective, right? So before you quit, you're smoking and you're thinking, this is just destroying my health. It's pointless. I'm not going to do this anymore. But people still have this idea in the back of their mind that it's pleasurable. So it's really hard to quit, because when all these mental health problems and the physical withdrawals come on top of you, it's like really intense, right? And so especially if you quit cold turkey, and then people are basically they lose their will to quit and they just go back to it, they relapse, right? And smoking has a really high relapse rate. I mean, there are more ex-smokers than there are smokers, I believe, like statistically, but it takes the average person 10 times to quit cigarettes, which is just ridiculous. I mean, vaping is slightly less addictive. We kind of know that now, but it's still like very difficult to quit. People need to realize this is the main thing that kind of motivated me to quit. And this is what kept me like quitting the whole time, is that smoking does not give you pleasure. And that's quite like a sort of radical idea. But here's my idea, right? So when you smoke a cigarette and you're addicted to smoke, okay, no, let's talk about before you're addicted. So when you first start smoking, when you first start ingesting a lot of nicotine, you get this big high, right? It's very pleasurable. It's essentially like sex, like an orgasm. It feels like that because it's just a chemical. It's chemical changes in the brain, right? It induces pleasure, like a high amount of pleasure. And it also gives you a slight like body high as well. It's very pleasurable when you start out because, hold on, let me share my screen here. I'm bringing out the Microsoft Paint. But this is basically it, right? So the bottom line is time and the vertical line is pleasure. So this is your baseline, right in the middle. So this is where your mood is typically. That's like your average mood. And some people sometimes will have periods where it's like mostly up, and sometimes people will have periods where it's mostly down. But on average, for most people, it will generally be right in the middle for most of their life. With smoking, so this is what they taught us in health class. Let me get a brush here. In health class, they taught me, this is actually what they taught me, by the way. This is legit. They said with a drug, it goes like this, then like this, then like this, then like this, and it just goes down and down, and it just never stops going down. But that's not true for a drug like nicotine. I don't know exactly how it is with other drugs, but this is not the case for nicotine. So with nicotine, you first start using it, it goes way up, right? And then it comes down, and then way up, and then it comes down, and it just gets lower and lower, and eventually you'll come to this point where it's like this, and it just keeps going back to the baseline. So this right here is when you're smoking. So that's when you feel normal, and this right here is when you're going through withdrawals. Okay, I'm editing this video, and I'm now realizing I didn't get back to my original point. So I said that smoking is not pleasurable when you do it long term, like when you're addicted to it. And I didn't really explain why I think that, because I mean, on this graph, you can see it's going down, but it's also going up back to normal. So you kind of perceive that as pleasure because you're going to be down most of the time. And then when you smoke, you go back up, right? So you're going up. So your mood gets better. So you kind of perceive that as pleasure. But basically my idea is that there are two different types of pleasure. So there's one real pleasure, so from the baseline up and then back down to the baseline, that's real pleasure. And then this is perceived pleasure, so it goes right at the bottom and then it goes back to the baseline and then right back down to the bottom. And you can make an argument you can make a case to say that perceived pleasure is just as significant or just as legitimate as real pleasure. I would disagree. Because you're just feeling normal. That's you know, you're not actually feeling pleasure. Pleasure is when you feel nice. This is not pleasure. This is just from feeling bad to feeling normal, then to feeling bad again. And I don't think that's actual pleasure. So that was my idea. I didn't actually articulate that properly in the video, so I'm doing that now. So there you go. So if you quit, you're gonna be like this. It's gonna slowly go back up over the span of like a few weeks or days or however long it takes, or even months. But this is the extent of it. It just goes up to the baseline and it just goes back down, and it doesn't just keep going down. That's a lie that they told us in health class. So yeah, that's long term, from the beginning to long term. So that's how it goes. Z2, what do you think about that? What do you think about that?
I think it is accurate.
You'd say it's accurate?
Yeah. Although I've never smoked before.
Yeah, so... yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So my main opinion on nicotine and smoking in general is that it's basically like a predatory, like a scheme.
Yeah.
Like the consumer is like tricked into thinking it's good for them. Because they feel the pleasure from the first time.
Yeah.
And then they get sucked into the scheme, and then
yeah, for every drug, that's totally true.
And the money. And then, like nicotine, same case with alcohol, it's been like normalized.
Yeah,
or, like,
yeah, definitely.
Constant stigma around it, so people don't really realize that.
Yeah.
So, I think it's kind of like marketed towards like being good or like a positive trait. Although that's not the case, it is still a drug at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, it is like heroin or like cocaine.
Yeah.
It's still a drug at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's cigarettes are. Some people say that cigarettes are just as addictive as heroin and cocaine. And apparently, with vaping, taking the nicotine out of the cigarette does make it less addictive. We're kind of observing that now. But it's still very addictive.
It's kind of like one of those things that, like, over time, like, people didn't realize the health benefits, like the health like detriments, and then like over time, like nobody questioned it. Yeah. And now it's been questioned, and for like years and years. Yeah. That's kind of like hard to erase. Yeah. Because you can't really like get everyone to settle on like one opinion because they might not know the news or care about it. Yeah, so the public health sector in pretty much everywhere, as far as I'm aware, I mean particularly in Australia and New Zealand, we're pretty good about it. We I think the most interesting thing about cigarette marketing to me, did you know that the cigarette packaging in Australia and New Zealand, I probably already told you this because it's one of my favorite facts about cigarettes and marketing, is that the color on the cigarette packaging has been voted the ugliest color in the world. So that's why they use that color. It's like this sort of brown olive color, and it's just gross. And also they put these images of like people with fucked up lungs and like, you know, but there's a massive like campaign, a constant campaign against smoking. But I think some people still think it's pretty cool. So I think that's kind of a problem. But, you know, if they think it's cool, then that's fine. The problem is when they start using it, really. Yeah, because packaging doesn't do anything in like the face of being addicted. Yeah. More people are getting to vaping than smoking. Well, yeah, no, the thing is, we're I don't know what it is like in Australia, but it kind of, when vaping started out, people were kind of pretty worried about it. Like, we didn't really know what it was. And it was like that for years and years. And then people started to they began to become pretty popular. And I think in Australia, I can't remember exactly what happened because I watched this documentary. This was so long ago, though. I think in Australia, they they basically made it, I think it was prescription only for quite a while. Is that, do you know about this? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's still prescription only. Oh, it's still prescription only? I think so. Yeah. It is quite frowned upon, although people still think it's like, they still have this same stigma. Yeah, as like cigarettes.
Yeah, I would say
think
they
it's
actually have
bullshit.
more stigma against them vapes than cigarettes, just in my experience. People kind of view cigarettes as still being kind of cool, but vapes are just like, people think they're like for kids.
It's like the new thing. It's like the
Yeah, every new sort of invention that comes out is gonna be frowned upon for a while until people catch on to its usefulness, generally speaking. But yeah, the thing about vapes is that they are clearly, I mean, from the data that we have at the moment, and people say we don't have enough data about vaping, which is kind of silly because we don't have enough data about anything. But the thing about vaping is that we have kind of observed through plenty of studies that it is a hell of a lot safer than smoking cigarettes. You cannot really say for sure at the moment, but you can be pretty sure. You know what I mean? Like, it's been around for I think over 20 years now, and people don't realize that. I think a lot of people think that vaping was invented in like 2019 because that's when people started using them, but they were actually invented in like 2000 or something, and then people just didn't use them until very recently. And their popularity just like skyrocketed in just a few years ago. Yo, I am back. You've made a nice little decoration.
yeah. Yeah, you did say that.
Our vacuum cleaner broke. I'm so sad. I'm actually crying at the moment. You can't hear it or see it, but I am actually crying at the moment.
Oh. Yeah, actually. Well,
No.
yeah, you're bullshitting.
It's a joke. I got some food, so if you could like talk for ages while I eat, that'd be great. Where was I? I think it's in New Zealand at the moment. We have been running this campaign trying to get people off of cigarettes and onto vaping, and one of the most significant things they've done, I would say, is, well, I mean, first they legalized it, of course, but I think one of the most significant things they've done to get people off of smoking is, aside from all the ads, those have been running for years though, but the newer things that they've been doing just quite recently is they've been increasing the price of cigarettes by like massive amounts. So when I was smoking, cigarettes used to be $20.50. That was the cheapest you could get. That was only a few years ago. And now the cheapest you can get, I think, is like $35 to $40, somewhere around there. So it's like almost twice as much. And people who still smoke are spending massive amounts to smoke. And I think they're trying to deter people from smoking. And they're not doing that with vapes. So they're keeping vapes the same price. And vapes have always been cheaper than smoking, but now they're like even cheaper, like in comparison. So they're trying to get people who smoke onto vapes instead, because it's difficult to tell people to just, oh, you can't smoke anymore. It's difficult. I mean, you can't just ban it, you know? But what they're doing, didn't they try that in Australia? Didn't they try and ban cigarettes?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. I swear I heard about that, like, fairly
I'll look it
recently.
up.
Okay. But what we're doing here, aside from, making cigarettes more expensive and making vapes, keeping them the same price, basically they're banning it for people a few years down the line. I don't know how many years exactly, but they've banned it for a certain, but I think it's, I'm gonna have to look that up. But I can't be asked looking it up right now. But they've essentially said that people who were born after this year cannot buy cigarettes at all. I think that's probably a good thing, because I mean, I don't know much about what happens when you change the laws around drugs. I mean, I know that when you ban drugs, it generally doesn't work very well. I mean, we've seen that throughout history, like with America trying to ban alcohol. But yeah, I think it might work, because what they're doing, instead of taking the drug from the people who are already using it and just saying, oh no, you're not allowed to use this anymore, instead of doing that, they're saying, okay, you can't start it in the first place. And I think that's probably a better idea. It's probably going to work a lot better. I don't think it will stop everyone, but I think it would probably be a lot more effective than just ripping it from people's hands. But I mean, obviously, like optimally, no one smoked at all. No one even started. But we're kind of screwed because nicotine is one of the most like sought after drugs. That's just where we're at the moment, like globally.
I think like banning cigarettes from newer generations would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Or like America banning alcohol.
Yeah.
Prohibition happened, so where people, so when it was outlawed, and so people got to keep like the alcohol they already had, and then people started like buying companies, like making workarounds for it.
Yeah.
Uh, and like a lot of gang warfare, a lot of death, uh, a lot of people just like getting killed, like the economy like tanking because of it.
Yeah.
They lost control on alcohol, so they can enforce underage drinking, like other laws, like so anyone could drink and it wasn't like frowned upon because it's illegal now. Like we can't drink it too when like it's illegal for us to drink it too. So like little Timmy over here can drink as much alcohol as he wants as long as he pays.
Yeah.
And for like that, you can't like for that you can't look at the present. You gotta look towards the future
Yep.
because all that taking away it now would cause chaos and prohibition B2 and a lot more crime, gang warfare, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But if you let it slowly fade away, uh, there'd still be like people selling it to underage people
Yeah.
for money. But that happens with like every drug.
Yeah.
There's not much you can do about that. Kind of with time
Well,
when you figure out
the thing with essentially legalizing a drug and actually letting people sell it in shops to anyone over a certain age, which would I think in Australia I think it would be 18 as well. It definitely would be over here. They could make it 25, but I doubt they would do that because they don't do it for alcohol and they don't do it for cigarettes. But legalizing a drug essentially takes a lot of power away from the gangs, and I think that would be a pretty good thing. I think a lot of people agree that would be a pretty good thing because gangs mostly exist to sell drugs. That's like their whole thing. They just sell drugs. But yeah, drug dealing like illegally is a whole nother conversation, I think. But yeah, staying on topic, I think there are actually plenty of other drugs that are similar to nicotine in that they have an immediate effect for a short while, and after you use it a certain amount of times, it's different for different people depending on the drug and depending on the person. After you use it a certain amount of times consistently, like every day, it loses efficacy, so it completely loses the effect. So for example, you see this with sleeping pills. So sleeping pills are generally prescribed, they're most effective when they're prescribed short term, in my experience. I don't have much experience, but I've taken a bunch of different sleeping pills, and the best time I've had with them is when you're prescribed a pretty strong one for a pretty short amount of time, like just for a week or so. 5 days, I think, is generally the what they prescribe it for over here. And so what that essentially does is it like knocks you out, right? But the idea is to take it at the exact time where you want to go to sleep and then wake up at the time where you want to get up and then get up. And what that does is it resets your circadian rhythm so that you can feel energized and you can go back to sleep and feeling normal. And if you take the same drug, the same sort of, we're talking about like a pretty hardcore sleeping pill for more than roughly 5 days, depending on the person, you start to get addicted to it. And essentially, once you get addicted to a sleeping pill, basically it doesn't put you to sleep anymore. It kind of is just, that's just, you have to take it to feel the normal amount of sleepiness that you should be feeling without them. and then when you wake up, you're more tired than you should be. So
Yeah.
they kind of lose efficacy, and it's also the same with benzodiazepines. I'm sure you know about benzodiazepines, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're an anti-anxiety drug. Essentially, is their main. I don't know if they're used for other things, but that's their main use. So benzodiazepines, or benzos, is what people call them. Like things like Xanax, clonazepam. I think Zopiclone is like technically a benzo, I think, but like not really. And lorazepam as well as another one. There's loads. They pretty much all end in apam, is how you know it's a benzo. But essentially, what they do is, if you take enough of them, it essentially it's the whole point is to reduce anxiety. And if you take them for I don't know, you take them once a day for 5 days. Those 5 days you'll have less anxiety, and when you get off them, you shouldn't have too much more anxiety than you're used to, because you're only on them for a few days, and it doesn't let your body get used to it. But I think I have heard of I see this in movies, in American movies, where people are prescribed benzos long term, and people just take them just like every day in a scene. They take them all the fucking time. And I don't know if that's a normal thing in America, but I'm pretty sure we don't fucking do that over here. I mean, maybe we do, I don't know. It depends on whether the psychiatrist or I think psychologists can also prescribe them, or GPs I think can prescribe them as well. It depends on what they think is suitable, but I think it also depends on whether they get paid to prescribe things. Because you shouldn't prescribe those long term. It's the same with sleeping pills. You should not prescribe them long term. They completely lose their efficacy, and it becomes pointless. Like nicotine is what I'm trying to say. So you can prescribe them for a short time. So if someone is particularly anxious and they're only expected to be anxious for like the next week or so, then sure, you can prescribe them. I'm not a psychiatrist, of course. I don't know when it's suitable to prescribe something, but all I know is that after a certain point of time, after a patient has taken these kinds of drugs for a certain amount of time, they completely, like, their efficacy just goes down to pretty much zero, and they're just pointless after a certain amount of time. Some drugs don't. Some drugs are different. Like antidepressants can last for a really long time, even though you take them every day, and they can still hold up after like years. But certain drugs are just not like that, and it's kind of weird that they're prescribed so kind of loosely, is what I'm trying to say.
I think with the benzos, I think they're prescribed for a short term, so you can start getting on a long-term treatment without too much interference of anxiety.
Right, okay.
I think the same is true with antidepressants, but for SSRIs, if you have like a problem, like a permanent problem with like producing serotonin, you could be prescribed like SSRIs
Yeah.
for your life. I think that's the point of them.
Yeah.
Because, not to my knowledge, benzodiazepines don't like increase any certain like neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
But SSRIs or like antidepressants, they would increase that neurotransmitter. So if you have a trouble like producing them, you could probably be prescribed them long term, and there's like not much treatment other than like coping like mechanisms.
Yeah.
Before.
Yeah, well, that's
So
kind of what I'm trying to say, is that's a much more effective, like, long-term strategy for treating these problems, is getting people to change their habits, and that might be mental habits or physical habits, but that's essentially the best way we know how to do it. And I think some people will just go to a GP and they don't have like a care team or anything. They go to a GP because they have bad sleep, and the GP will be like, well, shit, I'll just give you some pills because that's the easiest thing I can do, because we don't have like hundreds of appointments that we can meet up and we can talk about your habits and what you do and how you get to sleep and how much exercise you're getting. So they might just prescribe you a pill because that's the easiest, most convenient thing. But I think for people who have like care teams and people supporting them, I don't know if these drugs should really be prescribed long term.
I think in certain cases it is suitable to prescribe them long term.
Yeah,
Like in very specific cases. Definitely not in the majority.
yeah,
Because the effects die out and
yeah,
they become redundant.
yeah,
So in like the high of your graph, it would be most effective to start like long-term treatment.
yeah.
That's currently what's happening to me.
Okay.
So like find like ways to like cope with long-term stuff.
Yeah,
Uh, so for like nicotine, it has the same effect, but obviously like benzos and antidepressants aren't like beyond like a prescription,
yeah,
or you have to get them illegally.
yeah,
Well, with nicotine, you can get them whenever,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then that becomes addiction, and then
yeah.
you kind of become the victim.
Yeah,
Because
so
they are very similar,
I think a
but
lot of people they kind of coming back to smoking. I think a lot of people they use the self-help as an excuse to remain addicted. I heard this so often throughout meeting other people with like mental health issues. They tend to be smokers, and they tend to when I ask, why do you smoke, or when I point out that everyone around me is smoking, people will say to me, "Oh, they're using it like they're self-medicating," and I kind of found that just kind of harmful to suggest that smoking is a medication, because it doesn't work long term. So that kind of always bothered me, because it wasn't true for me, and I don't think it's true for anyone that smoking can help you long term. If you're using it every day, I don't think it can help at all. Um,
yeah,
when you're
I
no,
think if
sorry,
you have the right approach
yeah,
to the use,
yeah,
it could be suitable. Although, for a lot of different factors, like the like general reputation of it,
yeah,
and you eventually become like addicted because it is addictive.
yeah,
You can just buy more whenever you want.
yeah,
Uh, and there's actually a similar drug called Dextromethorphan,
yeah,
which is in most over-the-counter cough syrups.
yeah,
There have been cases of people which like overdose on it,
yeah,
and like you can buy it over the counter in like most countries,
yeah, yeah,
and like it could be like PCP, LSD, psychedelics,
yeah,
like any hallucinogen, like
yeah,
NOS, whatever, and it can be addictive. So it can reuptake serotonin, like a SSRI,
oh, okay.
and then that can become like dangerous too. Although nobody really bats an eye at that.
Are
It's
you
kind of the
talking
same.
about like serotonin syndrome?
Yeah,
Is that what it's
Stockholm
called?
syndrome.
Serotonin syndrome?
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, that can
Just kind
be
of,
pretty dangerous at an extreme level. Is that right? But generally, it just gives you like diarrhea and nausea.
it can kill you, like mess with your heart, mess with
Oh
your
right, yeah, yeah, yeah.
metabolism. Although it is not very dangerous. Although, like in severe cases of addiction, it could lead to death.
Yeah.
Or if you intentionally use it for death, like, you know, you definitely do risk death. Uh, it's very similar to smoking, although due to like it being a medication, like at a pharmacy, like it's not as used. So like the nature around smoking and that, although like both of them are very similar in how it works, it's definitely since the drug tastes really bad,
Yep.
it's like a way to uh people to stop like abusing it.
Yep.
Although you can't really do that with smoking.
Yeah, I
So
think
like it's
I
kind
think
of
most of the time with these like unpleasant experiences with drugs, especially like particularly addictive drugs, generally people get used to it and they actually begin to like it. Like, most people when they first try beer, they think it's fucking gross, but then they drink more because they like it, and then eventually they come to actually like the taste. It's the same with like cocaine. People, they snort cocaine, and people, they get this. Some people will get this sort of, the mucus will like run down their throat, and people will think that's fucking gross. But a lot of cocaine addicts will tell you that it tastes fucking great because it just, their brain associates that awful experience with pleasure, and it begins to like it. So yeah.
Yeah. So that can just help like short term, like people starting on it, but smoking, you can't really do that. So it's kind of more difficult touchy subject.
Hmm.
But I think if like cultural changes like were around smoking, that could stop smoking addicts like quite a fair bit.
Yeah.
It's, you know, people don't treat it like a legitimate drug. They just
Well, okay. Well, here's playing like devil's advocate here. Some This is an observation I've made, is that people like to think. I think a lot of people like to think, oh well, we need to change how society views cigarette smoking or vaping. So let's just insult all the addicts until they stop doing it, so that it's not cool anymore. And I think that's a really bad way of looking at it personally, because I mean, when I was addicted to it, it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. It really doesn't work. Like, it doesn't stop us from doing it. It's just putting us down and making us, you know, feel like like we're just scum, you know, we're just addicts. But it doesn't actually help. It doesn't help at all. It really doesn't. But generally speaking, it doesn't work with anyone. It just kind of puts people down for no reason. Because I think that's a pretty bad way of trying to get people off a drug, is to shame them until they stop taking it. I don't think that works at all.
and with that could have the opposite effect, that they feel like bad about themselves and then look
Yeah.
for smoking for like pleasure, and then you kind of get them like in secret. They don't get how
Yeah.
smoking addiction, and that can really backfire. It is like a very tricky subject,
Yeah.
which you know, a lot of studies and like tests will need to be done to find like the proper approach to it.
Yeah.
Although it will definitely take time, because you can't just like take it away overnight, because more gang activity,
Yeah.
possibly more deaths, because people won't really want to like admit they smoke because it's illegal and they might get caught.
Yeah.
So like very young people could start getting into it, get into like gang activities, like, and then like the American Prohibition, that could happen. So you know, it definitely will take a lot of time
Yeah.
for like the proper solution to be built. Like I don't think anyone right now can like properly say like the proper approach to it. Need to be like more data,
Yeah.
because it's a very big change to like a country or world, because this, it's not just like smoking, it's like economy, cultural. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it.
Yeah.
Some countries might not be able to afford to like outlaw it,
Yeah.
because they're too dependent on it, and they
Yep.
can't hire police to enforce it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of stuff, bad things can happen.
Yeah. I think
So
I think a lot of people kind of have this idea around smoking where they think that, oh, we need to get rid of smoking and something radical needs to change, right? Something very significant needs to happen. But I think people don't realize that kind of, it already has happened with vaping. It's like this new technology that's, I mean, it's saving a lot of lives when people switch. But you don't see the effects straight away. And a lot of people like to say that vaping is not really that much safer because, well, if you look at the data, there are plenty of people who are dying from vaping. I mean, not plenty, but there are a few people here and there that are dying from vaping. And I think, first of all, interestingly enough, this happened in, I think it was 2018 in the US. There were like a couple of thousand deaths all of a sudden from vaping. And people were like fucking rightfully pretty scared, right? People were like, holy shit, this is like even worse than smoking. People are dying straight away. But we kind of figured out that it was a lot, mostly misuse of the products. Like people were vaping, like, cannabis liquid. I don't know exactly what you call it, but people were vaping cannabis essentially. And that oftentimes leads to death. Because I don't think you're supposed to do that. But also, even now, people are still dying from vaping, and people are wondering, well, what the hell is going on? Is vaping much safer? But I think this is a really important statistic to keep in mind, is that the vast majority of people who vape either used to smoke or do still smoke at the time where they're vaping. So you have to, that kind of throws off the data. Because it's like, well, how do we know what's killing people then? Is it the cigarettes or is it the vaping? And I think, it's difficult to make judgments based off of, like muddy data. But I think it's pretty clear that it's probably the cigarettes that are killing people still. And vaping is not completely safe. Of course it's not safe. I mean, nothing that you do in excess is safe. I mean, drinking excess amounts is very unsafe, but it's totally legal. You can generally do some pleasurable things safely. Like if you drink just on the weekends, you drink a little bit on the weekend, you're probably going to be fine. You have to balance risk and reward, right? And with vaping, I think the reward is that we save like millions of people's lives through getting people to switch from smoking, which has like, I can't remember exactly how many toxic chemicals, but it has a fucking lot. And vaping has like 95% less of those chemicals are in vapes. So it is quite clearly a lot safer. And there's a lot of fucking propaganda about people saying that vaping is just as bad as smoking. And there are plenty of reasons why you would want to say that, which I won't really touch on because I don't know much about it. But there are plenty of reasons to get people off vaping and to keep them away from vaping, and it's pretty much just the money incentive.
I think vaping is a good idea because it's like a new thing. You have control over it.
Yeah.
It's not like it's been around for centuries like cigarettes have. So with like Australia, make it prescription only.
Yeah.
That is like a great use of like controlling it.
Yeah.
Although it's still definitely not like inaccessible if you want it.
Yeah.
Although the point is that like I think people definitely do still like die because of vaping.
Yeah.
Like new people get into vaping and then die because of it.
Yeah.
Although
I
think
no, go
you
on.
gotta
Go on.
balance out the lives of how many people are deterred from smoking
Yeah.
and like didn't die from it, because you can't really know, like you aren't like a prophet, you can't see into the future, see like who got saved because they chose to vape instead of smoke.
Yep.
Well, like it is still like tragic, like how many people still die of it.
Mm-hmm.
Although you definitely do need to balance it out.
Yep.
And like the risk is probably the reward. I think it comes down to how you value a human life. Like
Right.
if
Yeah.
numbers matter, then vaping's good. But
If what?
like,
Sorry, can you repeat that?
so if like you think numbers are everything and human lives are human lives,
Yeah.
everyone is equal.
Yeah.
Although you do see like many younger people get into vaping than cigarettes. So if you value the youth more than the general population,
Yeah.
then that can impact it.
Yeah.
Nobody will have the exact same morality, so it's a touchy subject.
Yeah.
But I think the right decision would be to keep vaping under like a prescription. try
Right.
to limit accessibility to it to smokers only,
Yep.
so they can get off cigarettes.
Yep.
And then get onto vaping. It, the price changes are good,
Yep.
although there'd definitely be a lot of people going broke buying cigarettes.
Yep. Yep.
Although I think that I don't have like the numbers obviously, but I
Yep.
think that people getting like would be getting like a prescription for a vape to quit smoking, and
Yep.
that's with money incentive
Yep.
that can save lives more than it kills people.
Right.
So
Okay.
I think like the main take on smoking is to like minimize as many casualties as
Yeah.
possible
Yeah. Definitely.
because it's already gone bad. You
Yeah.
can't just like Thanos snap that shit out of
Yeah.
reality.
So within
Otherwise,
the next century, we are with the current rates of people picking up smoking and the population going up. With at the current rate, it's estimated that within the next century, 1 billion people will die from cigarettes, which is a lot of fucking people. And I think the main way to um, to kind of help counteract that is to get people to switch to vaping. And I think I personally I advocate to get people to switch to vaping, and I think the easier it is to get vapes, probably the better, to a point, of course, because you don't want children to pick up. I mean, not children, but teenagers. You don't want them to pick up vaping or smoking or anything.
yeah,
So
I
yeah,
don't think vaping is like the beyond and all solution
yeah,
because like constant change, you still got to like evolve. So something new can like be better than vaping, be
yeah.
invented,
Well,
and then
something
everyone
that's
switches out
that's
and then
um,
slowly go down.
something that is kind of the next step after vaping is NRTs, so nicotine replacement therapy. They already exist. So we've got the sprays, we got the patches, the gum, the lozenges, and plenty of people use these to kind of try and suppress the withdrawals, but then they're not very effective at all. And vaping is shown to be far more effective at stopping that. And of course, it's more effective because it's more like smoking, and that is kind of a bad thing. You don't want it to be um, you don't want it to be so effective at suppressing withdrawals, because that essentially means it's just like smoking, and that's a bad thing, because then people will remain addicted to it. But I think the general way that we can kind of try and get people off smoking is essentially wean them down slowly. So get them to smoke less, and then after that get them to vape, and then get them to vape less, and then after that you can try NRTs. But for me, I didn't find NRTs useful at all. I think vaping might be considered an NRT nowadays, but I don't know about that. But when I say NRTs, I mean basically like the gum and the patches. But I didn't find NRTs to be useful at all. Basically what they do is they kind of prolong the withdrawals. They basically make you they don't get rid of your withdrawals. They help suppress them, but they're not very effective. And what they do is they kind of keep you thinking about nicotine, and I think that's kind of a bad thing. So I didn't want to do with the NRTs this time, and I didn't, because I realized that they didn't work for me. But of course, everyone's different. Um, but yeah, I think the best route to take is to come off slowly, um, because I mean, cold turkey. I think people who successfully quit cold turkey, it's like 95% of people don't, or was it 97% don't, something like that. So the vast majority of people who quit cold turkey from cigarettes do not succeed. Um, so what you want to
Yeah.
do generally is get people to switch to decrease use, then to switch to vaping, then decrease use, then to switch to NRTs, decrease use, and then you'll just have nothing. So that's usually the most effective way to do it. But everyone's different, so some people will be able to do it cold turkey, and some people won't.
Human would vary on the person, but that would be like the gold standard human. I believe the same like logic is used for many other things.
Yeah,
Yeah, like you scale, so with some things you scale down to up, and there's some things from up to down
yeah,
very slowly.
yeah,
So it kind of eases the process, so it's not like a one hit thing.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, I think that would have to happen with smoking, for the long term and short term,
yeah,
like the person and like the changes to like laws and like how it's monitored and like controlled by countries, governments and that.
Yep, yep.
Like it's not something you can like do anything overnight, otherwise it would have already happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Like
I think vaping is kind of the logical next step we need to take at the moment because it seems to be the most realistic. But that's just what that's just my opinion. Um, yeah, other people will disagree. A lot of people think that vaping is like evil and that it's just as dangerous as smoking, and so people are pretty against it. Um, but yeah, I think it would be a good thing to get people to switch, because it's realistic, and it's progressive, and it saves people's lives and it gets people to quit their habit, because quitting vaping is a lot easier than quitting smoking, and most of that is down to the fact that with vaping, you can take someone. You can put them on 50 milligrams, and then you will say, okay, well, you've done 50 milligrams. Now let's put you down to 40, then 30, then 20, then 12, and then 6, and then 3, and then 0, right? So you can slowly get people off vaping, but you can't do that with cigarettes, because cigarettes, they come in various strengths. So I think you get the 9 milligrams ones, and then you get the 12 milligram ones and the 14 milligram ones. I think it goes quite high and quite low, but I don't know the exact strengths, but generally that's what it is across the world, I believe. But it doesn't say the strength on the box, on the packaging. It doesn't. They don't advertise it. So you find one that you like, and then you stick with it. But you can't slowly come off cigarettes. I mean, you can, but it's not very realistic because it requires too much effort, too much willpower, and people don't have that. So yeah, I
yeah,
think that's why quitting smoking is so difficult. But that's why I advocate for people to switch to vaping, because it's so much easier to quit. If I was still smoking at this point, I would not be able to quit. Just like that. I mean, it's pretty much impossible. um,
I'll
but
have to.
sorry.
Yeah, uh, quitting smoking will have to be progressive, like with many other like addictions.
Yep, yep,
Like it can't be overnight.
yep,
Like you need to be realistic and like optimistic at the same time, and you got to
yep.
balance those out.
Yeah,
I think vaping would be like okay, like you have more control over it. Like
yep,
you said, you can like switch down the nicotine contents, like turn that down, and there's a lot more you can do to like
yep,
aid quitting it.
yep.
But with like a cigarette, there's not much you can do. You can't like turn a setting down
Yeah,
for
yeah,
like
yeah.
tobacco or nicotine.
Yeah. So I think what people encourage people to do at the quit line places, I don't know what they're all called, but the quit smoking like institutions or, you know, groups or whatever you call them, they basically will say, okay, you want to quit smoking, you want to go from cigarettes to nothing. I think what they generally say is they'll get you to buy a pack of cigarettes. They'll tell you to take out one and then smoke 19 and then buy another pack, and they'll get you to take out two, and then you smoke 18, then you take it out, and they get you to take out three, and then essentially they just take you down lower and lower, and eventually you'll be on one cigarette, like a day, or a week, or every few days. You'll be on one cigarette, and at that point you can either drop it completely, or you can, I guess you can take out the tobacco from the cigarette. You can start with 3/3, then 2/3, then 1/3. So you want to come off it, not as slow as possible, but pretty close to as slow as possible, because the slower you do it, you're just kind of delaying the inevitable, that it's going to be difficult at the point where you go from some nicotine to zero nicotine. That's going to be difficult no matter how you look at it. Unless you're doing
Yeah,
it,
of course.
as slow as humanly possible, but that's just stupid, because you might as well not quit at that point, because it's going to take you years. So
Yeah, it's definitely a touchy subject. It'll probably depend on the person a lot.
yeah, yeah, quitting
Uh, s-
massively depends on the person. Yeah, definitely, and their use, their habits.
you can take like a different approach to other people. Uh, there's, I think, like, tobacco, like in cigarettes. I think the idea worth considering would be to like the legalized nicotine amount in cigarettes. So
Okay.
like you can make it like you can prohibit like a certain amount of nicotine or tobacco in a
Right.
cigarette, and then you just take it lower and lower as it progresses.
Right, and change the
And
law in accordance.
yeah,
You know what, I can kind of get behind that idea.
yeah, it'll take like years and years.
Yeah,
Like it's not gonna be an overnight change.
yeah, yeah,
So like people get used to like one like they get used to like a low dose of cigarette.
yeah,
Once they're used to that, you slightly lower it,
yeah,
and then they kind of forget the what the old ones used to be like until it's easier and easier to
yeah.
quit.
So this idea is called nudge theory. So it's the public health sector essentially tries to nudge people slowly to get to take less and less drugs, to do less and less harmful things and more helpful things. So they nudge you to exercise for an extra 5 minutes, and then they nudge you for another 5 minutes, another 5 minutes, and eventually you're doing way more than you originally wanted, or way less than you originally wanted. And that it's the same with drinking, with exercise. They want to nudge you in the right direction slowly. And you can do this with individuals, but you can also do this with a whole population of people, like in a country. You can try and get people to do less and less of bad things and more of good things. And you can do that slowly enough where people don't even realize it, but eventually they've pretty much solved the issue.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we can take that approach to cigarettes. I think it is doable, but you do have to remember that cigarettes make a lot of money. So
Each country would have to take a different approach. Like it
yeah,
can't be like a worldwide solution to every country.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because some countries are very dependent and some countries could live without it.
yeah,
And like some countries would not want to do this because they think like the money is greater than the population.
yeah,
Like worth like the populate like the money is worth more than reducing the amount of smokers in the population.
yeah. Yeah, I
Yes,
think yeah, I
it
think in
is.
some countries there's more of an incentive to keep people smoking rather than other countries because of the way it's set up.
It'll have to be explored further in different countries.
Yeah.
It's like a much deeper issue than like getting rid of cigarettes.
Okay. Okay. Let's wrap this up. Okay. Let's do one final question. Okay. If you were in charge of stopping people from smoking, or yeah, let's say from smoking, what would you do to get people to stop smoking?
Lower legal tobacco and nicotine contents in cigarettes.
Yep.
Increase the price.
Yep.
Run campaigns to promote vaping instead of cigarettes as
Yep.
a treatment and offer like a free doctor visit to like anyone who wants to like quit
Yep.
and get like prescribed a vape.
Right. Okay. I'm pretty like pro like letting anyone over 18 buy vapes. What I would do, okay, this is what I would do. The actual things I would do, like serious, like the first things I would do, I would keep doing what we're doing. So I would keep increasing the prices of cigarettes slowly, and I would, yeah, try and get people onto vaping if they smoke, but try and minimize the amount of people trying vaping as a first source of nicotine, like in their lives. I would try to minimize that. But yeah, that's essentially what I would do. So thank you Z2 for talking for like ages.
You sing happy birthday to me? It's been that long.
Happy birthday Z2. Happy birthday Z2.
Yay!
You're like getting your ass lit on fire by the candles when you crouch over them.
Oh yeah.
Now you're just rubbing your ass in salt. You're not even doing it. I guess you could say Zintu has a hot ass.
Oh, sure. Ba, 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 ba.
Okay. I'm leaving.
Easy, actually. Alright. See ya.
Alright, see ya.